Hi and welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and play out this little scenario that I drew up. We have this is going to take place probably about the early 80s, I guess. I was going to do kind of a hypothetical Indo-Pakistani 71 scenario, but I think I'm going to take it back up to closer to the 80s and just do a hypothetical battle here. Right now we have the Indian forces on the left of the screen and the Pakistani forces on the right. These order battles reflect an approximation of the forces as they would have been back in the 80s, to the best that I can using this game. Here in a minute I'm going to zoom in on the action and give you kind of a more detailed picture. But for right now, we have the sequence of play. It's played in a series of turns, each of which is composed of a number of sequenced phases. I think I read this already. The sequence outline is basically the eastern movement phase, and in this case the Pakistanis are going to be the eastern force. And then we have the western movement phase, which are going to be the Indians. And then we have the joint combat phases, which we first start with the targeting resolution segment, or detection basically, and then we go ahead through these 4 range bands of combat: air to air, air to sea, until we finally reach the air versus subs, or attack versus subs resolution segment. First thing, when I come back, we're going to talk about movement. Okay, we're going to start, like I said, with the Eastern player, or the Pakistani player. I'm going to use kind of a hidden unit, kind of a process that I like to do when I'm playing solitaire games with fewer units. So I don't really know which marker contains real units and which units those are. So I'm going to go with each one will move at the slowest rate of the forces that I do know are in the scenario, which will be the submarine unit, which has a movement rate of 3. So none of the markers will move greater than 3 until they're detected or targeted. The first thing we're going to do is we will move our ships across the hex grid. Basically, you can move wherever. There are no real let's see, are there any kind of stacking rules? I don't know if there's any kind of stacking rules. You have to stop if you enter a hex occupied by an enemy unit. But submarines are not required to stop. So basically you have to stop if there's a sub or surface ships, but subs do not have to stop for other subs or surface ships. There's some kind of rule here for decoying. If a hex containing opposing surface ships also contains at least as many friendly surface ships and or submarines, the hex is not counted as opposing occupied for the purpose of stopping the movement of later units and so forth. So I guess if both sides have the same number of ships, you don't have to stop in the hex. But it looks to me like with the Eastern player moving first, probably simulating the Western player's greater intelligence assets and detection capabilities, it looks to me like if they were to move into a Western player's hex, the Western player would get a chance to move out of there. So that gives a Western player quite a bit of an advantage, I would imagine. But anyway, on to movement. So I'm going to basically assume that the Indian forces over here in this one stack are going to be moving on, I don't know, towards one of the Pakistani air naval bases, and the Pakistani forces have been sent out to intercept them. So we'll kind of see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and move. We're going to go ahead and move this unknown force. 1, 2, 3, and so on. I like this plexiglass. Gives it a nice three-dimensional look. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and that's pretty much the Pakistani movement. We can come over here to the Indian forces, which are basically player controlled, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully stay within some sort of focus. Now I know these guys, the slowest movement rate is their carrier, which is a 4, so I'm going to have to only move at about a 4. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then 4 up to here. Our objective is basically at the northern end of the map. We get up towards the northern end of the map, then we're within airstrike range of Pakistani air bases and or port facilities. At least that's what I'm assuming. Anyway, this is basically just an exercise to show you movement in combat. So we have finished all movement, or have we? We do have somewhere Pakistani Indian Air. It's going to kind of give you an idea here if I can zoom in a little bit. This is an Indian Air unit. It'll focus. Will you focus? Well, you can see it. There's two types of air. There's short-range air, which is not depicted by a counter, but you keep track of it on a record sheet off to the side. And then there's these longer-range units, air units, which represents bombers or whatever. They have pretty much the same symbology as the surface ships. Their anti-surface rating is in the middle on the left-hand side with its range designation. The lower left is its anti-submarine value. The upper right is its electronic warfare. The middle right is its victory point values, and let's see what's on the lower right, since these aren't quite the same. Sortie numbers. In other words, this unit can be used 3 times in a turn. However, there is some sort of an upkeep attrition in which each time you use a unit like this, its sortie limit drops by 1. So for every 3 or less assigned by type, long-range aircraft or short-range, the number of that type or from that base that's available for assignment in later turns is reduced by 1. So, not quite sure how to read that, but anyway, I take it to mean that the number of sorties that it can launch for every 3 units, and that would count as 1, is reduced by 1. So, I don't know. I'm guessing you have maybe 1 or 2 sorties out of it, but I could be mistaken. Anyway, we are going to send that plane over here to, I'll find him here eventually, over here to this little group of potential contacts and kind of find out what's where. So they have the counters have an unlimited, the air counters have an unlimited air range, so to find or detect anything, they have to be within, what do they have to be within? Targeting, I think it's got to be in the same hex. So we're going to go into that hex there and kind of find out what's there. So when I come back, we'll do the targeting procedure.